completing the square, you have got to have x squared, okay? So you can't have 4x squared, 5x squared, you just need x squared. So that means you have to factorize out the 4. Even if it doesn't go into everything, you still factorize it out, okay? 4 comes out and I'm left with x squared plus x, okay? Now, 4 doesn't go into 2 nicely, but 4 does go into 2. Yeah, 2 over 4 is a half. Okay, so you're actually just dividing whatever your constant is by the number in front of the x squared. So you're taking 4 out of each one of them. Okay, now you leave it out there. Now let's complete the square, okay, with this. So this is my A, my B, and my C. I know my formula is x plus b over 2 to be squared minus b over 2 to be squared plus your c. And that's all being multiplied by 4. Is everyone okay with that? I'm just using my formula there. X plus b over 2 to be squared minus b over 2 to be squared. Okay, plus c. Okay, just keep tidying, leave that 4 on the outside, leave that there like that. What's a half to be squared? When you're squaring a fraction, you square the top and you square the bottom. Square the top, 1, square the bottom, 4. Lovely. Yeah, I'll do it for you. So I would leave the minus out, okay, or the minus has to go outside the brackets because it's not minus in there to be squared, it's minus your answer, okay, so you have to square it first, then it's a minus. Now a half, take a quarter, is just your quarter. At this step, what you do is you actually multiply the 4 back here and back here, okay, and this is going to be your answer. So you multiply the 4, which I actually just leave like that, okay. I can't put 4 into that bracket because the bracket has to be squared before I multiply it by 4, so I just leave it like that. And what's 4 quarters? 1. That's my answer, okay. So it's the exact same thing the whole way down, you just keep a 4 on the outside. At the very end step, you multiply the 4 by this and the 4 by this. Okay?
Does the answer have to have a square?
Completing the square means it has to have something to be squared. Yeah. Okay? Now, let's talk about why we use this. So I said yesterday we'd write a few things down. This is called vertex form. Okay? So let's write what vertex form tells us. Why would we possibly write this instead of this? Okay, so what's the reason for doing it? Okay, so, yeah?
You can do that the other way as well, don't you?
What other way? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The problem is you're working, so it'll be square the first and the product of the 2 multiplied by 2. So then you have to think like it's going to be a fraction. Okay, but absolutely you can do it the other way. Totally. Just you still have to pull out the 4.
Would you recommend doing the formula?
Oh, that's just me. I just like the formula because I know it works without me having to use my brain too much. I know that sounds ridiculous, but you know, I really have to think about it when I'm doing it the other way. Whereas this way I just learn my formula, I throw it in. Yeah.
When it's Roman numbers, would you just use the other one, and when it's fractions,
It's totally up to you. Yeah, totally up to you. Whichever way you find easiest, you do. Okay? So, vertex form tells us, okay? So, vertex form tells us a few things.
So is that the end answer there?
That's my answer, yeah. Okay, it tells us the max and the min, or sorry, the max or the min points. Okay? It tells us the axis of symmetry. I'll explain this more in a minute. And it tells us whether it has real or imaginary roots. That would happen when you put it equal to 0. Now, this can take two forms depending on whether one's a plus or whether it's a minus with the x squared. Okay, so if it's written in this form, okay, which is what we have, it tells us the minimum point at P and Q. Okay, so in this case our minimum point is P and Q. Now notice it's a minus P and then your minimum is a P. So you're changing the sign from here to here. So what would the minimum point be in this question? Minus a half and the Q1. That's my min point of the graph. So write that in next to this if you want. Okay, that's my minimum. Minimum, basically it's a U-shaped graph. I know it's U-shaped because it's quadratic. So that bottom point there is minus a half, 1.
So do you always change the sign?
You always change the sign of the P. If it's an N-shaped graph, this is the form. Okay, you'll have a minus with the A. And your max is the same. It's still PQ. It's still change that, keep that. You do have to learn, now not the formula, but you need to know that to get the minimum point out of this, I need to change that sign and write it down and keep that sign and write it down. Okay, so don't worry about learning all these letters, nothing like that. But it's just the minimum comes from changing that sign, write it down, keep that sign, write it down. Okay, well I'll show you a few more examples maybe.
So what would the max point be and plus 1 over 2?
The max, so this question only has a minimum because it's a U-shaped graph, okay? An N-shaped graph has a maximum. So you're talking about one that has minus 4x squared. It would be a completely different question. For quadratics, it's either a max or a min. Okay? So this one, it has your minimum point. Let me just show you a few things here. Can I get rid of the board?
Is P always a change to minus?
P is always change it. From whatever it is, change it. Yeah, and Q is keep it. Okay? Let's just have a quick look at some graphs. Okay. So, looking at this black graph here, the vertex form of that is x minus 3 to be squared plus 2. Can you tell me what the minimum point of it is? Change that 3, keep that 2. It's that simple, okay? So that's what you'd use this for, completing the square, okay? Same with down here. You're going to change that. It'll be a plus 3, and you have nothing, so it's 0, 3, 0. Okay? Now this is what I was saying earlier, these all have minimums because they're all U-shaped. Okay? A maximum happens over here you have an n-shaped graph that has a maximum, okay? So this is my formula, minus x squared plus 4x minus 3, okay? And I'll do one of these now in a minute. I might actually do that one. Yeah. Your max value is still the same. You're still just changing this, so it was minus 2, so it's 2, and keeping this 1, okay? So it just depends on what type of graph you have, whether it's a max or a min. Remember I said a couple of days ago that this isn't very efficient for finding the max and the min. Calculus is much more efficient, okay? And we'll do that when we get to that chapter. But for now, this is why we complete the square, to find the max and the min point, okay? Right, so I'm not going to do that one. Okay, I will. Is this example 4?
Yeah.
Okay, write the quadratic equation in the form x minus p to be squared plus q and use it to solve f of x equals 0. So first of all, they want you to complete the square, then they want you to solve it equal to 0. Okay, so to complete the square, you're just going to use your formula, or the other way, it's up to you. It's an x squared, so I don't need to pull anything out of it. You only pull something out of it if it's a minus x squared, or a 2x squared, or a 3x squared. Okay? If it's just x squared, just complete the square. So, x plus b over 2 to be squared minus b over 2 to be squared plus c. Okay, so 4 over 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4, so that's minus 4 plus 1 is minus 3. Now I've completed the square there. Any issues with that? That's just what we did yesterday. Okay. That's the first bit, that's complete, so write it in the form. It's in that form now. Okay? Now we were saying this form is useful for if we want to write down the max or the min. I know it's going to be a min because it's U-shaped. So my min is what? Minus 2, minus 3. That's my minimum point. Now they didn't ask me for that, but we're just writing it down there just to be sure. Okay? What they did ask me for was use it to solve f of x equals 0. So this thing equal to 0, what would I do? Minus b formula. Yeah. Okay? Factorizer minus b. In this case, it's going to be minus b. They've asked me to use that form, so I'm putting this equal to 0. So remember I was telling you one of the reasons we do this is to see where it has real roots or complex roots. Okay? So solving this equal to 0 is just still getting x on its own. So that minus 3 comes over and becomes plus 3, doesn't it? Okay. Now, sorry, that's a square. What do I do now? Yeah, square root both sides. Square root both sides, because the square and the square root is going to get rid of that. Okay? Now, this is just the minimum point. It's nothing to do with the question they asked me. So they asked me about this bit here. Okay, so I'm only using this bit here. Now, remember, you have to take the plus and the minus. So x is going to be, that 2 comes over and becomes minus 2 plus or minus root 3. What does that look like? It's like one of the answers you get from the minus b formula, isn't it? It's because you're getting the exact same answer. So when you put this equal to 0, or when you put this equal to 0 and do the minus b, you're getting the same answers. Okay? So it's just another way of solving it equal to 0. You could have done the minus b. The reason I didn't do the minus b is because in the question it says, use it to solve. Okay? They wanted it in this form and use it to solve. Okay? Is that alright?
If you just did the minus b, how many points would you lose?
Now, because they specifically asked you to use it in the form, you would probably lose a nice chunk. Okay, they'll still give you some, definitely, because you knew it was equal to 0. Yeah. Okay.
How do you know if you do up it on the right?
Because they said solve f of x equals 0. So I put it equal to 0.
Yeah.
I move everything away, and I square root both sides.
So f of x is just...
The function, yeah. Probably in the question I should have written, write the quadratic function f of x equals this thing in the form. Okay?
If you didn't write down plus minus root 3, would you get it wrong?
The plus or minus root 3, you need both. Yeah. You're just going to lose a mark. That's all. Pardon?
Why is it plus and minus?
Well, in your minus b, isn't it? Minus b plus a minus.
Yeah. But like,
So it's the same thing. You need, because you need to take both. It's again this whole thing of minus 2 squared and 2 squared. What's the answer to both of them? 4 and 4. So if I'm getting the square root of 4, it's both a plus and a minus. Okay, so it's the same idea there. You have to have the plus. It could have been a plus, it could have been a minus. We don't know. So take both. Yeah. Okay.
why do you square both sides instead of like doing out the x?
And because if I do out I just end up with the minus b. I end up back here. Okay, so what you're doing is you're trying to skip that step, otherwise I would have just done it from here. Okay, so it's just another way of solving it, that's all. It's not that effective, well, it's not that efficient really. Okay, it is a little bit slower than just doing the minus b. But sometimes they ask us to do something a particular way.